Hi, I'm Carl Taylor from visualeducation.com. Today we're going to be looking at this image of the Palmolive Thermal Spa shower gels and how it was created, how to get these splash shots, how to get this sort of vibrancy and energy in a shot like this. And people look at a shot like this, these sort of advertising shots, and they think, oh, that looks quite complicated. And if you don't do it the right way, it is. But actually, you can make things very easy for yourself. And you make things, your success rate on getting the shot far more likely. And I'm going to talk about that and show you some behind the scenes on how this image was captured. First of all, let's explore the image. Let me just zoom in to point out a couple of things. I think there's a couple of things that we need to clarify first of all. First of all, this is a real photograph. These bottles, these shower gel bottles, were dunked into this water. We want this interaction with the water, the believability of the splash, the colors, the refractions, everything else. We need it to be real. Some people think, oh, well, we could just photograph the bottles and then comp them into the shot and pretend they were in there. But let me show you that's why that's something I wouldn't do. First of all, let's start with this blue cyan colored bottle. One of the things you'll notice is the little refractions and dappled light that's falling on the top of the bottle there. So that's natural because that's the light that's coming through the surface water. You see that patchiness of light on here. And we're only getting that from the interaction of the light coming through the surface of the water and then dappling onto the bottle. So that gives it an element of believability to begin with. The next thing is if you look at the reflections on the underside of the surface of the water, notice that that is actually reflecting the color of the bottle there because it's a natural reflection, the underside of the water bouncing the light back like a mirror, and that's being picked up throughout the shot there. And then the same in this area with the green, all of those refractions of light are there because it's real, because it happened. Part of the top of the bottle is sticking out the top of the water. The rest of the bottle is submerged. We've got that lovely dappled light on the label of the bottle as well, so that the shower gel, interacts with the water. The next interactions that we want to be real, of course, is the bubbles. The bubbles rising up, and you can see again the green in the bubbles, the blue, cyan in the bubbles from the actual products, rising up and wrapping around the products in real life, in real time. And that, for me, is all super important to the believability of the shot, for the shot to work, for it to, have that vibrance and energy. So let's talk about the techniques involved in getting those bottles in the right position, getting them to end up shot after shot, because you're not going to get this right in one shot, okay? The amount of different bubbles that rise up and distribute each time you dunk it in the water has a lot to do with the speed of the motion of the objects going into the water, and then every time that it goes into the water, it's different, so you need to do a number of attempts till you get one where you're happy. The splashes at the surface every time can be different, so you've got that to consider as well, and the sweep of water and the sweep of the shape of the wave of the water in the tank as well. So there's a giveaway. First of all, this type of shot's done in a tank, so a large aquarium, glass aquarium or acrylic aquarium, and the background is a white wall that's illuminated with a couple of lights to get a nice, even, pure white wall. That light comes through the tank, so obviously it hides the glass because the glass is transparent. It comes through the water, and it also comes through the products. So if you look at the products, you'll see that they've got a lovely translucency to them, which brings out that color in the actual products, which is really nice. And then, of course, that light refracts through the bubbles for the high contrast of the dark tones on the edge of the bottles, but still the light parts coming through as well. The next problem with doing this sort of shot in tanks is that every time you do a dunk, you get splashes on the inside of the tank, on the glass on the inside. So you need to have a squeegee, and you need to remove from the surface, above the water surface, you need to run the squeegee along every time to remove those droplets of water that have gathered on the tank. Below the water, it doesn't matter because obviously it's just solid water. So, how do we light it and how do we do it? Well, let me show you, because this is a nice little trick, advertising photography trick. We'll go into the behind the scenes shots now and show you what's going on. So first of all, there's the tank with the water. Now this is quite an old shoot. This was in my old studio, so this is probably 14 or more years old. And you'll notice the speed light there. I'm going to talk about speed lights. Speed lights are synonymous with being fast flash duration. And before I was using very fast broncolor lighting, I was using mostly Elinchrom lighting for most of my work, but it didn't have the flash duration that I needed. So when I needed fast flash duration, I would turn to speed lights or group of speed lights, which I've done in this case, and I'll walk you through that in a second. But we'll come back to that. First of all, you can see Tim in the background. He's got the bottles. Now, it looks like he might have just thrown the bottles in the air on that shot, but actually he's not. You'll see that he's holding a piece of acrylic, transparent acrylic, and what we've done is we've glued the bottles to the transparent acrylic. So they're in a fixed position every time. And we're using a transparent glue so that we can put the glue on the back of the bottle, squidge it to the acrylic, and you can't see the glue because it's transparent and the background white light is shining through it and through the bottle, so you don't really see the glue. It just looks like it's part of the gel, of the shower gel itself. So why do we glue the bottles to an acrylic sheet? What it means, there it is after the shot and the bottles are just resting in the tank. But what it means is that we have a form of repeatability. So we can dunk the bottles into the tank time and time and time and time again to try and capture different splashes and different bubbles. But every time we know that the bottles will be at X position in the frame. They might be a little bit higher or a little bit lower or a little bit left or right, but more or less they're going to be in the area that we want them to be, and that means they're in the area of lighting where we want them to be, but more importantly, they're in the area of focus, and the labels and the important brand name details are facing camera exactly how we want them. So let's just revert back to the photograph again. And you can see there, both bottles are positioned in a way that they are facing directly towards camera. The brand names are clearly visible, and the bottles have a nice compositional aesthetic because they're locked, fixed, glued to that acrylic sheet. The acrylic sheet is dunked in each time, but because it's transparent, you can't see that either because we're using a bright level of exposure from the back as being white, and we get that exposure to just above the level of white that we need, and then that will transfer through the tank, through the water, through the acrylic sheet that's holding the bottles, through the gel in the shower gel, through the front of the tank, and we get that measurement right so that we end up with just about pure white for the background, and that's the perfect exposure as well for the transparency on the bottle. So the whole process of gluing them to the sheet is about repeatability, getting those bottles in the same place. If you just start throwing them in the tank random, it's never going to work. Of course, you're going to have one bottle skewing off over there, one there. You'd be there for a year and a day until you maybe got the shot that worked. So this is what gives you the repeatability. We do have other techniques for doing this that actually use chutes and pipes and things to get things into tanks in certain places. We've got a really good live show on visualeducation.com where we look at that, show you the techniques of shooting loads of fruit and canned drinks and all sorts of things into water tanks to create these amazing sort of advertising style shots. But that's another story. Right, so let's now move on to the lighting. So starting with this first shot, you can see there's a speed light at the top here. And that, I believe, was just a Canon 580EX speed light. And we had that aimed to come down through the top of the water to get those nice little refractions on the bottle, but also give the majority of the lighting on the front labels of the bottle. So that's what that speed light is for. And the reason we're using a speed light is because we need to freeze the bubbles, freeze the splashes, and speed lights have a very fast flash duration. And as I say, this was before I was using Broncolor fast flash duration studio lighting. We move to the next BTS shot. A little bit more tricky to see the speed lights, but we'll come back to that in a second. But what you can see is a couple of lights being used for the background. Now, those weren't as essential as being needed for high-speed flash duration. I've got one here and one here, lighting the background wall, and a bit of white polyboard stuff on the floor to bounce some light up to keep a nice evenly lit background. We move to the next behind-the-scenes shot, and here you can see the other flashes. So there was two more speed lights here shining through the side of the tank to get that nice brighter illumination, making sure that all my bubbles and my liquid and everything is illuminated correctly. But again, using that fast flash duration, ensuring that everything's frozen. So here is one of the background lights on the left, the other one's on the right over there. One speed light from the top, which is the main key light onto the products as they get dunked in, and two speed lights from the side for an additional little bit of lighting. There's another shot from the side as well. Ignore all that other light in my rather untidy studio there. Those aren't being used for the actual photograph, just the ones that I mentioned. This was actually shot on a much older camera many years ago, 22 megapixel Hasselblad at the time. And if we go back to the first shot, there you can see the all-important part of the bottles being glued to the transparent acrylic. And then what would happen is that Tim would sweep the water with his hand to get a little bit of wave motion in the tank, and then immediately dunk the products into the tank. As soon as they hit the bottom and the bubbles are being formed, I'm taking the shot. And then we're just doing that over and over and over again. And what we've got is this consistent repeatability of the bottles being pretty much in the same place every time, but each time we're getting a unique splash or a unique formation of bubbles. And that allows me to capture the final result that gets all the bubbles that I want where I want them, the splashes as I want them, and of course the products perfectly placed. So that's a little behind the scene on how we do those advertising shots. As I say, we've got another great one on visualeducation.com where we do a similar process but with tinned soft drinks going into a tank, but with loads of fruit and exciting dynamics going on. And in that one, we use sort of drain pipe chutes to fire the items into particular places. If you'd like to check that out, you can see that on visualeducation.com. Hope you enjoyed this episode behind the scenes on a particular advertising style shot. I'm Carl Taylor. Thanks for watching. See you next time.